This photograph is of me in elementary school many years back now. I remember my early years of education with fondness.
Oh, this picture. So I must have been about 6 or 7. I think we were still in Sierra Leone, and I was incredibly mischievous.
Yeah, look, I was about 13 or 14. I'd like to think as I look back that I was a good studious child, but I probably wasn't.
This photo was my high school graduation photo, and I had my eyes focused on going to college.
I was in kindergarten, and somebody came around saying, hey, we want to take a photo for Mother's Day. So I was really excited. You know, I wanted to give my mom a photo and a card.
Education has helped to form who I am. It's been a great blessing.
Good memories of the teachers, a lot of friends at school.
I felt at that age, truly, like I could do anything.
I recollect my schooling years, it was just a bunch of fun.
School is more than just going to a place. It's actually opening up their minds to a new world.
Exciting things that may happen to you as a young person help to form your character and your perspective on life.
All of those skills are taught in different ways and in different capacities. And without that, I simply do not believe that I could have achieved what I've achieved.
Children truly are the future. And if we make an investment in our children today, what would our world look like 10, 15, 20 years from now?
Children who do not get access to education miss out on so much. Their ability to claim their space in the world is certainly challenged. Their ability to lift themselves out of poverty, their ability to challenge the circumstances in which they find themselves is simply removed. Their ability to have access to markets, their ability to command their space in the workplace is almost impossible, and in many ways they are trapped in a circumstance not of their own making. We have so many millions of children around the world who may have gifts and talents that we as a world lose out on simply because those gifts and talents haven't been harnessed or been placed in a framework or a place where they can be nurtured and channeled.
We know that the outcomes in many communities are not great. We are not tapping into the human potential when girls, boys, youth don't have the ability to be able to really maximize their talents and the gifts that they've been given. And that's what happens. And so if folks don't have access to a better future, which is what education provides, then what we're essentially going to end up with is a future for all of us that looks a little bit less bright.
And so if we do not educate the children in those communities are caught in what I would call as a vicious cycle, where they simply cannot lift themselves out, they cannot get access to markets, they cannot provide for their own education. Education is a key pillar, it is a key driver to those communities and to the people within those communities to take responsibility for their own lives and to lift themselves out of poverty.
So education is really, really, really central to all the work that we do, because we believe that the work that we do needs to outlast any project or activity. So at its most basic form, ADRA will go into a community. We will assess what the needs are, and sometimes the needs are for more teachers, sometimes the needs are for more supplies, sometimes the needs are for more school buildings. We've seen examples where we have communities that have no school buildings, and so teachers are teaching classes of 100 kids outside under a tree. And so what we do is we look at that and we do our absolute best to meet as many of those needs as possible. So we believe in approaching education in a very holistic way. So we engage in primary school education, we engage in secondary education, we also engage in vocational training, we engage in adult literacy and numeracy. I know we're talking about children, and sometimes it's the case that their parents need some of that support as well. And so we really try to capture as much of that community that is going to ultimately benefit the child as we can.
Doing nothing is not an option. And so what advocacy does really is get to the core of the problems, the root causes, to address those by advocating to governments, to communities that, hey, we really need to look at education and resolve the issues that have prevented kids, communities from having access to that. So it's speaking up, but also getting results and making change around those priorities.
Education means much more than just the books, the reading and the writing and the arithmetic. It means opening the mind to concepts, ideas, thoughts that God would plant there. When He says, "Come, let us reason together," I believe He is calling for those children who are out of school.
By the grace of God, we can help people, and I believe that we have an obligation, a biblical obligation and duty to do that.
Isaiah 54:13 somehow, for me, tells me that God does care, and not just a little, not just in passing, but God cares deeply about these children.
Many people will stop me and say to me, "You don't know how lucky you are," and I'll say to them, "Why?" They say, "Because you're part of a worldwide church."
The Adventist Development and Relief Agency is so connected with what Christ was doing, and therefore it is intimately connected with what the Seventh-day Adventist Church as a world family is to do.
ADRA is a ministry of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The reality is we are one. We are called to a holistic response to the gospel.
Because Christ, as we know, met people's needs physically, mentally, socially, and spiritually.
If you look at we as an organization, our desire is to serve humanity so all may live as God intended.
ADRA and the Adventist Church serve one God and share also one goal: to see every child everywhere in school. We are really fortunate to be able to work with the Adventist Church because there are 22 million Adventists out there. This is a ready-made movement.
When you look at the church globally, it's a lot of us around the globe. And so I started to get really excited because I'm like, I'm a part of a pretty big organization.
I'd love to think that in the more than 20 million Seventh-day Adventists around the world, that we have more than 20 million advocates for ADRA around the world.
One of the premises of the Seventh-day Adventist Church is education. We need to be able to take a stand globally for the cause of children worldwide. And for us not to have a voice really would be sort of like an oxymoron.
We are speaking together in one voice to make sure that the world understands that this is an important issue, that education is for every child.
It is important for Seventh-day Adventists to have an opinion, a strong opinion, and to advocate for education throughout the world. This must be part of who we are and what we bring to society.
In linking with the church, we bring the full hope. We don't want to just give them hope here on earth. We know that this earth is temporary. In meeting their needs and in meeting those very immediate demands in their lives, they become receptive to the beautiful gospel message.
It's so important for me as a pastor, as an administrator, as a church member, to advocate for Seventh-day Adventist education, and for those who don't have that available, for simply education itself.
In order to address the issue of millions of children out of school around the world, ADRA and the Seventh-day Adventist Church came up with this initiative, this campaign called Every Child Everywhere in School.
We're saying children everywhere should have an access to a proper, decent education.
We decided the way in which we could do that and truly achieve that mammoth goal is to start an advocacy campaign. Because if we can start changing policies in different countries all around the world, then more children will have access to education.
We came up with a petition so that we could involve not just our church leadership around the world, but also our grassroots members, our churches everywhere, that they could learn about this, but also take a stand.
Our goal was to get 1 million signatures from one side of the world to the other side of the world, signing up saying, enough is enough. Every child deserves to be in school.
When you say 1 million names, I think that really resonates with people. If you walked into my office and you have a stack of paper with just signatures all over saying all these people want to have children in school everywhere, that will cause me to sit up in my chair and take notice to what it is that they're asking for. As the campaign manager, one of the first things I thought was important was to develop a strategy. We are a global church, and so we have millions of members worldwide. So when I really began to pick it apart, I thought, well, maybe this is not as hard as we think, but we need to do this very strategically.
To achieve this goal, we had to work with our brothers and sisters in ministry. So we worked with family ministries, we worked with education, we worked with children, we worked with youth, and of course we worked with women's ministries who are trailblazers when it comes to advocacy. You think of what they did and what they achieved to end it now. We needed to rely on our brothers and sisters within ministry to ensure that we could achieve this goal.
You know, over time, we developed different strategies, and so it started, developed a suite of different options from paper petitions so that people could go to full stadiums of people and get a petition, go out to the streets and sign up people. Also, we developed a way to capture those signatures, typing in a word into WhatsApp. You would have an automated process where you could be able to, after a few messages, sign the petition and join the movement. Also working on digital platforms through social media to be able to really target people efficiently throughout this campaign. Also, you would see ads, digital ads on your Facebook page. Just by clicking on that ad, you could also go to the petition page and add your name as well. And so we wanted to really use technology to facilitate this campaign and make it accessible to as many people as possible. And little by little, we started to see pockets of excitement, of activity. We would see the numbers go up. Some regions were really active.
When different countries took the campaign personally, the numbers reflected that, and that really was the case for the Ivory Coast. They literally internalized this campaign and saw the need of education in their communities.
And then little by little, we started to see bigger numbers and more involvement. People were sharing on social media, people were sharing videos, and that excitement started to really permeate and reach different parts of the world. And so for the campaign itself to see how the change is happening, it was really exciting. We saw young people, pathfinders, really engaged with this campaign, going out, talking to people, engaging them, and inviting them to sign the campaign.
A small country here, a small country here, a small country here, and we all come together, we can make big impact globally. So there's a scripture, Ephesians 3:20 says, "Now unto him who is able to do exceedingly and abundantly far above what we can even ask or think." When I saw that ticker, when we were at like 950,000, and I was like, I think this is really going to happen.
So it was on a Wednesday evening, and I remember distinctly, I got a text message with 3 words, "We did it," and followed by 4 exclamation marks. It was 8:05 p.m. that evening, and I could not believe it. I was so excited, I typed back, "Woohoo!" with 2 exclamation marks. So that was my level of excitement, but I was really thankful to God because something that started so small had finally reached its goal.
Praise the Lord, 1 million signatures. I knew we could do it because God had had his hands on this campaign from the very beginning.
Education is so important in the advancement of helping people to truly realize their potential. The Seventh-day Adventist Church has taken this seriously and gained so many signatures of church members because they believe in education.
To receive this overwhelming support of people saying, yes, we hear what you're saying and we'd like to support what you're saying, it validates one's position to feel that this is not us just dreaming up an idea, sitting in a boardroom somewhere, but that we're actually speaking to something that is a burden on people's hearts around the globe. As we worked on this campaign, things were really going well. Many of our staff had traveled the globe. They'd mobilized this campaign in various countries. Church members were supporting us. Our church leaders got behind this. And then coronavirus came.
What do you say to that?
COVID-19, the pandemic, has certainly affected all of us in a very dramatic way.
We have lost so much ground in the work that has been done around the world. We have lost the achievements of the last 20 years. We're going to have more children out of school. We're going to have more children with less access to school. The impact is going to be enormous. We've got so much ground to make up, and we have to make that ground up with less resources now. The challenge is growing, it is bigger.
That really, I don't have the words. I mean, it really breaks my heart. It breaks my mind to think about, to think about how their lives have just changed exponentially, and not because of anything they did. So if we think about the gains, for example, that we've made in educational enrollment over the course of the last 10 years, they're shot. I mean, we are going to be starting all over again in a lot of ways. And so it is really, really hard. People are suffering immensely.
We're dealing with people in very vulnerable situations. We've watched the media. We're told to wash our hands for 20 seconds, to put a mask on, to social distance from people. What do people in refugee camps do? What do people do in communities that just don't have access to clean running water? For many of them, this is just another problem. If it's not malaria, if it's not TB, if it's not Ebola, coronavirus sadly is just another challenge.
The majority of our families who we work with, they're already almost on their knees, and then this happens.
When I first learned that the COVID-19 pandemic was going to shut down schools worldwide, I thought about the children who need to be in school, to have a kind word spoken to them during the course of a day, who need to be in school to be encouraged that they are important, that they are going to do something important in life, that they have a purpose for living and being. I thought about those children who need to be in school to get a good meal, perhaps their only meal of the day. I thought about those children who need to be in school to get health care. I thought about those children who have nowhere else to turn.
Coronavirus in the U.S. has been very hard, but I cannot begin to imagine what it must be for the mother, for the father, for the grandparent they were already struggling. I can only imagine how difficult it must be for children around the world that are living in, conditions that are just unimaginable.
I also think of children. 262 million people before COVID not in school. That half of the world's school-age population is not in school right now.
Really devastating for so many people around the world, for many children that now will not be able to go to school as a result of this.
This is why we have to continue. This is why we have to just ramp up everything that we're already doing, because the world needs it.
To be honest, it was a low point for us. But it has reminded me again, when we reach those low points, we mustn't forget about whom we serve. We serve a mighty God. We serve a God who is greater and bigger than the coronavirus. Our God's not limited by a pandemic, and I believe that God will bless this campaign as we seek to better the lives of children around the globe.
The 1 million signatures is just a first step in an ongoing process. Listen, we did this initiative over the course of 9 months, and in 9 months we were able to get well over 1 million people that have the same voice, that want the same things in their community. We can now utilize this campaign, these signatures, for the context of these various countries and be able to start moving in the direction for that particular jurisdiction.
We now need to go to work. What that actually means is that, first of all, we need to actually understand our ask, country by country. The first step is to come together in our own countries, unions and conferences to localize the campaigning to ensure we are giving voice and advocating for change or increased commitment and solidarity in the right areas. The decisions about education is delivered and funded are not made by global leaders, but by national and local leaders. The second step is to define a clear ask. To assist the church and ADRA with this, ADRA has developed a policy report that has analysed the state of out-of-school children around the globe and the policies and actions needed to address this. The report identifies 2 key areas that require policy change. One of these areas is financing education, in which there are 2 key measures. The first is an increase in domestic resources for education. Where countries are on track, the minimum financing benchmarks are 4% of GDP and 15% of government expenditure. Where countries are off track, targeting spending will need to be lifted to 6% of GDP and 20% of government expenditure. The second is an increase in aid for education, where aid will be lifted to 0.7% of GNI, of which at least 10% is dedicated to education, and a minimum of 50% of education aid is allocated to low-income countries. The other area is addressing social and cultural barriers to education, such as disability and children living in crisis. The third and final step is to communicate our ask. To assist you with this, ADRA has created a resource kit that can be accessed online at adra.org. These resources include a media pack that will carry multiple media release templates so you can share the good news and our achievements with your local community, but also resources for groups, such as a how-to guide on how to run an event in your local church, as well as a how to host an advocacy event in your community, and of course a how to run a letter writing campaign with your friend groups, and resources for individuals such as how to lobby your local representative and how to prepare a policy briefing sheet.
My heart went out to all children, to those who are in most need, and I pray constantly that God will watch over them.
Our effectiveness in the future is going to be determined by our willingness to allow the Lord to work through us to touch people and their lives in a very peculiar and personal kind of way. And ADRA can be positioned to do that for the future in a wonderful manner. And I praise God for ADRA and for its work.
God is still in control, and He still has a plan for ADRA. He still has a plan for the church.
Whatever happens in the days ahead, we know that ADRA and the Adventist Church will continue to work together, and will continue to rely on the power of God.
Our ability as an organization to bring back that sense of normal gives me, it's why I'm here. I wouldn't be here if I didn't think that we could do it.
That we will move through this, we will come out of this. We are going to have many challenges that we will face, but I believe by God's wisdom and guidance and strength that we will be able to move forward. We must move forward.